This is Billy Parker and Bobby Parker with Larry Parker pushing him in the back. That's Bobby on the tractor and Billy on the tricycle. That's Cheryl Derusha in the background. I believe that might be Linda Sue that was with her. That is our dog Tuffy, and that is Jack playing with Tuffy, Jack Derusha. He'll be playing with him for the next couple seconds here. He'll be teasing that dog. That's Jack. He's probably about 2 years old in this video, a year and a half, 2 years old. He's playing in our backyard over on Emmons by 8 Mile and DeQuinder. It was our home that we lived in until about 1957. That dog, he enjoyed playing with Jack, you can see. This is Bobby Anglem. On the bike is Al Derusha, and the little one is Jack Derusha. This is Jack Derusha and Bobby Parker. They're both playing in the backyard on bikes. That's Bobby with a croquet hammer. That's our old Lincoln, 56 Lincoln that Dad had. And that's Jack Derusha and Bobby playing. That's Jack with Frankie Sather and Bobby and Billy Parker playing on the swings. Frank Sather lived about 4 or 5 doors down from us, and Bobby and Billy lived maybe about 7, 8 doors down. That's my grandfather, Ernie Parker. And that's my grandmother, Laura Parker. And that's Billy Parker, their grandson. That's my grandmother walking with Billy Parker and with Jack Derusha, my brother. And that's Aunt Guy Davis. That's Guy Davis. She's my mother's aunt. She's my great aunt. These tracks are where my Aunt Guy's son, Buddy, was on a motorcycle. He went over those tracks, and his bike flew up in the air. He flew up in the air about 50 feet, came down on his head, and died. And my Aunt Guy lost her son that day. That was Buddy Davis. And Aunt Guy Davis, like I said, that loss was pretty hard on both Uncle Shorty and my Aunt Guy. My Aunt Guy and Uncle Shorty, they lived on John B, a block away from us over on 8 by 8 Mile and DeQuinder. They were a second block in from 8 Mile and DeQuinder on the Warren, Michigan side. These are pretty bad tracks, I tell you. It's a sad story. I believe Buddy was married, had a child, and in fact, I think he had a Down syndrome child, if I remember right. Have to refer to my mother for some of this information, but it certainly had the family lost for years on that. These videos, they all take place back from about 55 to about 60, about 1960. I've got, actually the video now I've had, this is David Derusha in his first play. He's a frog jumping around in there. That was at Schofield Elementary School in Warren, Michigan. He was in kindergarten at the time. And that was his first play. That school was probably a quarter mile from the house. We used to have to walk to school. Being young, it was a little bit frightening. That's Cheryl, and it looks like Linda Sue twirling batons at a family picnic. That's Pete Parker with the uniform in the background. And that's Shorty Davis. And that's David Derusha right there looking at the camera. That's me. And sure, that looks to be like Billy and Jack. There's Cheryl drinking a soda, twirling that baton. And that, I think, is my grandmother. I can't tell for sure if that was my grandmother pushing Billy or who. But that's Billy Parker. That's Bobby Parker. Bobby Parker just passed away about 2 weeks ago. He had cirrhosis of the liver. It's the same thing that killed his father. Years ago, his dad died at about 40 some years old with cirrhosis of the liver. And Bobby died of the same thing. That's Shorty Davis, my Uncle Shorty. My mother's uncle. And that's Jack and Billy. I think Bobby's there too. Kids had a lot of fun. That's David Derusha, me, and my brother Jack. We're having a snow fight out in the backyard over on Emmons. And you see the house next door was my grandfather's. This is Hotchkiss Builders. That was who my father was working for back in the 50s. Dad and them were building a lot for Hotchkiss. They were doing 7 houses a day and roughing them in. He had about 100 men. And this is Jack Gazelle. And he was one of the superintendents for Hotchkiss, and a good friend of my father's. Interesting to see the vehicles. This is one of the job sites for a house that was getting ready to be built. They're getting ready to put the footings in. Just a crew working. It's interesting to see the kind of equipment they were using back in the day. For as much as it's changed, it's still a lot the same. But you do have the old trucks. This is one of the superintendents going over the site with the gentleman. You notice in the background old Studebaker. Kind of interesting to see the cars and the different things as these films come forward. They drop the lumber after the foundation. You'll see my dad's crew in building here. They build the walls. They put the sheeting on, the felt paper on the walls, and then they put the cornice detail on, and that's what they're doing here in the picture. It's putting the cornice detail on. And from there they'll raise that wall up, and you'll see it go up. Before they put that cornice on, they lay it out on the floor for the pitch of the roof and make sure that everything fits. And it's not like they do it in the South. It's the South, they just raise a wall up without any sheeting on it or any cornice. Do it all off scaffold. We were trained very different. We started working with Dad back in the 60s when we were kids hauling lumber. And we learned the proper way to do carpentry. No question about it. My Uncle Peg and my dad, them all started that business in 1950. They had a partner named Joe Trombley, Al Derusha, and Donald Derusha, or Uncle Peg is Donald Derusha. That's Homer. And Homer was married to Wani. Wani was Dorothy's mother. That appears to be Jack Anglem and Louise. That's Cheryl. And I believe that's Linda Sue that's dancing with her. Davis. Linda Sue is Shorty and Guy Davis' daughter. That's Diane. That's Wanda's Wani, I should say, not Wanda. Wani's daughter. That is Marge and Bill Sather. You'll see Cheryl and Linda Sue Davis dancing again. I think that was my cousin, if I'm not mistaken, that might have been my cousin Sharon also. That's my Aunt Millie, my Aunt Sis, Homer, Harry Paucan. My grandmother, Laura Parker. I'm going to have to refer to my mother to help fill in the blanks on some of these people. That's, again, my grandmother was drinking there. That's my brother, Al Derusha, Butch. That's my grandmother and Wani and Dorothy Parker. Dorothy Parker was raised by my grandmother. That's her graduation that we're looking at. This is a graduation party for Dorothy Parker. Again, that's Shorty and Guy Davis. That's Harold Derusha. He was one of my oldest cousins from Uncle Riley Derusha. That's Jack Derusha, Al Derusha, Cheryl. Harry in the background. There's Cheryl. That's David Derusha looking at the camera. That's Dorothy and her mother, Wani, and my grandmother actually helped raise Dorothy, so they kind of shared in her upbringing. Wani had Dorothy at a very young age, and my grandma and grandpa. That's David Derusha laying on the floor. That's her stepfather, Homer. Homer was a big Union guy. My dad and him used to have a lot of conversations together. Kind of funny. Also involved in the Democratic Party and politics. My dad was more a Republican. That's Pete Parker in the background. Can't tell who some of these people are. It looked like, okay, that was, I saw Diane there for a minute. Wani's other child. That's my Aunt Sis, my Aunt Millie Rayon, and Sis Anglem. That looks like Aunt Jane. That right there is my Aunt Millie, Aunt Sis, and Shorty. There's Marge Sather with Frank Sather. Frankie was an adopted son. The background's David, and Butch, and Cheryl. And that's Bobby and Billy. And looks like my mother. That's Guyola Derusha. That's my grandfather, Ernie Parker, wearing Dorothy's graduation cap. That looks like Big Bob. That looks like Don Derusha, Bob Derusha. Looks like Bobby Anglem in the background back there. That was my Uncle Swede dancing. That was Jack dancing. That's my cousin Bill Derusha and Joanne. That was his first wife. Again, that's Bill Derusha and Joanne dancing. He had been in the service. You can see he's in his... This is my cousin Bobby Anglem and Sandy Rayhan dancing. That's my dad, Al Derusha. That's my brother Jack with the cap on. Not sure who he's dancing with. Looks like my cousin Bob leaving the... That's Bob Derusha leaving the party. That's his that's my Aunt Annette. That's my cousin Jean Derusha, dancing with my cousin Don Derusha. Jean was my Aunt Sis's daughter. Donnie was my Uncle Riley's son. And that's Dick Koleski. He married Jean Anglem. And that's my Uncle Swede dancing with... I don't know who the fella is he's dancing with. They're just laughing away at him. It's my grandfather, Grandpa Ray Derusha, my dad's father. That's my grandmother, Eve Derusha, my dad's mother. You can see Billy dancing with his mother. That's my Aunt Annette. That's my Uncle Swede. They were married. Annette and Swede were married for a number of years. They divorced. That looks like my cousin. That's Harry Paucan dancing with someone. He lived with us for a number of years until I was about 8. He lived at the home for over 18 years that I know of. That's my dad dancing with his mother. That's my cousin Bobby dancing with his mom. That's my Uncle Swede dancing with someone, I'm not sure who. That's my grandpa and grandma dancing together. Grandpa Ray and Grandma Eva. That's Donnie dancing with his wife. That's Patsy Derusha. Patsy and Donnie, they got a divorce and got remarried before he passed on. That's my Aunt Millie. It's my dad dancing with my sister, Cheryl. This must be a part of a birthday party for my sister Cheryl. That appears to be my old neighbors, the Zimmermans. That's Cheryl dancing with, can't tell for sure. I don't know if that's Bobby or if that's one of my brothers or myself. Now that's my father with the shirt off and something wrapped around his head, building a house on Willowwood at 1830 Willowwood in Rochester, Michigan. They built that house in the 50s. In 57, that's my dad's partner's wife, June. That's Dorothy Parker, Dorothy Derusha. And that's Jack up on the hill. That's some of the Trombley kids. They had 10 children. We had 4 in our family. Dad's partner was Joe Trombley. And that's a combination of the Trombleys and the Derushas while they were building the house over on Willowwood. We moved into that house in 1957. We moved from 8 Mile Road. You can see the old Lincoln, some of the old trucks. That's some of Dad's crew. This is somebody back filling the house over on Willowwood. Getting ready to put the deck on and make it a home. Dad had been in the CBs during World War II and came home and opened up a construction company. This is his crew, Lakeview Building Company. You got John Kuipers, Oliver, Jimmy Eberts, I believe Jake is there, Eddie Sheld, number of the old boys. They're building the deck on Willowwood here. That's Joe Trombley, my dad's partner, my Uncle Peg. It's amazing the quality of work that they provided. And compared to what I see today, I still think the old guys did a better job of building than we do today. You look at the equipment they had to work with and what the equipment is today, it's unbelievable. You can see the old sign for the Lakeview Building Company. It used to have a hammer and a saw on it. That was a logo they had for years for Lakeview Building Company. I remember as a little kid having to sweep the driveways when rainy days when the mud would come in. Probably 3-4 years old, out there with a broom sweeping. That's my dad's partner, scoop down there. That's Joe Trombley. Like I say, this is the house on Willowwood, 1830 Willowwood, Rochester, Michigan. You see the whole crew. That's my father. Dark hair and the t-shirt. Al Derusha. That's my father working to put a well in the house on Willowwood. That's my sister. Watching him take an auger down and trying to get water. You can see the house has been framed in. She's pretty much ready to get a roof put on it. That's Harry Pauken. It's a gentleman that lived with us over on Emmons and on Willowwood my entire lifetime, pretty much. He came in, I think I was 6 months old when we moved to Emmons, and I don't remember a time that he wasn't with us. He was a friend from up in the UP. That's my sister. That's me. That's us coming off the school bus there. They're coming in. Before the house, I think, was done, we were going back and forth to school. We moved in the fall of 1957. And I believe that's my sister and one of the neighbors, one of the Zimmerman girls. I think it might be Joni Zimmerman. And that's me with the red coat. You're going to see Al in a minute. There's Al right there. Or Butch Derusha, my brother. This is when my cousin Larry was living out in California. His father was getting a divorce from Blondie, my Aunt Blondie, and so they flew him in, and he lived with us for about a year on Willowwood. But this was him flying in. You'll see him getting off the plane. That's Larry Parker. Amazing, the old planes. Still American Airlines all these years. And there he is with the bag in his hand. And that's him in the background next to my sister Cheryl, my grandmother. That's me and Al and Jack. I think that's Ray Derusha. That's one of my Uncle Riley's kids. But that's us. In the background you'll see Dorothy coming in. Dorothy Derusha. At that point I believe, or she might have been Parker at that time. That's my dad laying in the lounge. You'll see a picture here in a minute of Jack laying in a lounge like him. Like father, like son. I think that's Jack out on the swings. That's Jack. Not sure who the girls are. I think that was Al that was moving him around. That's Al on his bike. That's Jack on his bike. That's me walking with something on my head. That's my Aunt Sis. That's Cheryl, Butch, and Jack playing ball. I'm in the background catching it. You can see the trucks in the background. Wherever we were, we always had the trucks and the equipment there to do the jobs. In the morning they would take off, and at night they'd come back. Jack was a pretty good batter even back in the day. That's me. I was a terrible baseball player. That's my brother Jack with his hands in his pocket. My brother Al. It's my brother Jack. Looks like one of the Zimmermans. In fact, that's Susie Zimmerman, Joni Zimmerman. Cheryl with the bat. That's Jack. That's Cheryl. That's Jack opening the door, and that's me opening the door, letting Jack in. It's Dad's 56 Lincoln. He let us kids drive that up north. The station wagon is Harry Paucan's car at that time. Harry and Dad grew up together up in the UP. When they came back from World War II, he came to work for Pop. That's Jack. That's my father getting ready to do a little archery. Looked like my brother Al was there for a minute. Went target practice in the backyard over on Willowwood. Didn't have a lot of houses, and back in those days around us, we were pretty much in the country. That's Jack and I think Al. Looks like a bear on the back of a 56 Ford or 55 Ford. That's our fireplace on Willowwood. Looks like Christmas time. See us all coming out to get our gifts. Cheryl, Jack, Al, myself, my cousin Bobby, or cousin Larry Parker. That's my grandfather Ernie Parker with Bobby, my grandmother. And in the background you can see Al, Cheryl. That's Bobby or that's Billy and Jack on the floor. Billy Parker. That's Bobby and Cheryl, and that's me with my hat on, my arms folded. That's my dad laying in bed. Al Derusha. That's Jack's birthday party with Frankie Sather, the Al Derusha, or Butch. That's me in the corner. That's my sister, dishing out some ice cream, Cheryl. Jack's pretty happy, it looks like. I think he'd be about 3 years old probably there. Or maybe 4 at most. I think 3. This is Al and myself. We both got guns. We pull the string and it shoots caps off. Al is showing us how it works. That's David in the background. And there's Cheryl. Jack. Cheryl was 4 years older than me. Jack was 4 years younger than me. And Al was about 18 months older than me. Appears to be my dad putting a jacket on to go out. This is another party. Another one in the... I believe this is in the basement of the house in Willowwood. That was me going across the camera there. This is a wedding for... I'm actually the ring bearer. That was my cousin's. This is Dorothy and Harold's wedding. That's my sister. That's Arlene Derusha. She's my Uncle Riley's youngest daughter. That's my grandfather with Dorothy, Ernie Parker and Dorothy Parker, getting married to Harold Parker, Harold Derusha. That's my cousin Larry, standing up in the wedding, Larry Parker. And that's Harold Derusha. That's Diane, and that's my cousin Jean, my grandfather, Homer and Wani. Arlene and I were, she was a flower girl, I was the ring bearer. That's Diane, my sister, Cheryl, and Jean, and looked like maybe Kenny might have been there. Kenny was half-sister to Dorothy, or half-brother to Dorothy. That's my Uncle Riley. That's my Uncle Fritz, Riley Derusha. My Aunt Letha and Riley were married. Harold was their son. That's my dad and my mother, Alfred Guyola. That's Dorothy Parker, who became Dorothy Derusha. It's my brother Al, my grandmother, my Uncle Riley coming down. That's Kenny, and Kenny was Dorothy's stepbrother, half-brother. That's my grandfather. Ray Derusha. That's my grandmother, Eva, or Laura Parker. That's Diane, half-sister to Dorothy. That's Jean. That's my Uncle Wilbur Anglem. him and Aunt Sis Anglem, or Marion Anglem was her real name. That's Louise, married to Jack Anglem, and Louise's sister. That's Dorothy and Harold eating their cake. Looks like my Aunt Jane, who was married to Donald Parker, or Don, and Uncle Peg. That was Aunt June, and that was my grandma and grandpa Parker, my Uncle Riley and Aunt Letha on the other side, on Harold's side. My brother Butch. I guess they're having a kissing party. This was all in our basement. They had their party in our basement. The wedding party. These are Parkers, part of the Parker family. That's my Uncle Bob. This is Wilma Parker, Uncle Bob's second wife. Lived with my uncle. That's my Grandpa Ray Derusha. He's next to his oldest son, which is Uncle Riley, or Leon Derusha. Looks like Ray Derusha sitting next to his dad. Might be Shoemaker sitting next to Aunt Letha, I think is who's there. That was part of that appears to be my Uncle Wilbur dancing with, it looked like Jeannie, I think, his daughter. Jeannie Anglem, who became Jeannie Koleski. Yep, that's Aunt Sis in the background. It's my grandfather dancing with someone, I couldn't see who. That's my cousin Bill Derusha. And that's Louise. That's Jack's wife. That's my mother with Uncle Shorty. Again, that's my Uncle Bob and it's my grandfather dancing. It's my Uncle Swede dancing again. Looks like he's that's my mother putting her shoe back on. It might be my Aunt Gladys. I'm not sure who that is. That would be my mother's aunt, but those would be members of the Parker family, my father's. You can see Dick Koleski in the background playing the accordion. That's Marge Sather. That's my Uncle Bob again. You can see my Aunt Millie and Uncle Fritz. That's my grandfather. My grandmother in the background. Aunt Jane. Uncle Peg's wife. That's Jan Derusha. That's Uncle Riley's daughter. That's Harold and Dorothy kissing in front of their cake. Looks like they're fixing to feed each other again. Again, that's Jan. We had lots of fun when we were kids. That's my mother dancing with Dorothy. Uncle Bob dancing with Wilma. This is Harold and Dorothy bringing their first child home from the hospital. I think that would be Kim. She's the oldest of their 4 kids. This is Pete Parker and Ann. They got married at our house on Willowwood. Pete and Ann had 3 children. Pete had been in the paratroopers, and when he got out, he got married. He worked for Mutual Omaha Life Insurance, I remember, for a long time, then went into selling lumber. This is my father out on the water with some of his friends. I think my mother's there as well. They're out skiing. That looks like Dad coming in. Looked like they were having lots of fun out there. Something I've never been able to do is ski. Never been able to play much in sports, and not worth a darn on skis. I don't know what lake they're at. I'm not sure where that's being filmed, but looks like they were having lots of fun. These women have a tough time getting up there. Interesting to watch. I don't know if my mom was one of them women that were doing that or not. I couldn't tell. But I see one of them finally stood up for a couple minutes. Look like they're having a heck of a hard time getting her up. This is our trailer that we had before we had the cabin up in the UP up in Rexton. That's Dad's, I believe, 59 Ford convertible Fairlane, if I'm not mistaken. Sitting in front of the trailer. This is our house over on Willowwood. Dad's got a tractor going and all the kids chasing to get on it. Can't tell which one of us that was that's running in. One's running, one's walking. Looks like Butch and Dave, one of the other. Dad grading out with it. He loved to tinker with his toys. This is Dad with the tractor out there with the toboggan on the back. We had a little bit of snow, so everybody's running to get on the toboggan to get a ride. Looks like everybody's ready to go. That's our dog Rex. Don't see the snow out there like you used to see. Back in our younger days, we had a lot of it. You're going to see Jack pop out here. He's having fun with his little snowman. Looks like his snowman's about the only thing left on the ground. The rest is all pretty much melted. That's Marge Sather, and looks like they're having a shower. I think you'll see a whole bunch of pregnant women here. Must have been active time for all the newlyweds, for the young ones that got married. Jack trying to feed a baby here. Yeah, Jeannie Derusha, Jeannie Koleski's pregnant, and I think Louise is there and she's pregnant. I think Dorothy's there and she's pregnant. All having babies about the same time. That's David Derusha, that's me. And that, yep, I was thinking Jeannie might be, Jeannie Koleski is also there, and she's pregnant. So there was like 4 pregnant women sitting there. That's Wani and, or Wani rather. That was my grandma. And looks like my Aunt Millie. They're out there washing dishes. That's us kids back outside playing again. School bus coming through. We're out swimming on this one, and I believe that's Jack. I believe we're at Sunshine Beach on this one. That's where I learned to swim. I was diving off the board, and or jumping off the board. That looks like me. Looks like David. And we were jumping off a diving board, and I couldn't even swim, but I'd bounce my way back in, and that's where I learned to swim, is at Sunshine Beach. over on Ryan Road in one of the gravel pits. We lived out by the gravel pits, living over there in between the county line on DeQuinder, and they had been taking the sand out of there for years, and we ended up with lots of water. Years later, they turned around and made them the dumps and put the garbage right into the drinking water. It was a bad situation over that way. Polluted those waters pretty good. Waters used to smell like eggshells, stinky eggs. Yeah, this is definitely Sunshine Beach. That's Jack. Playing in the water and enjoying. That looks like Bobby. Or no, that's Billy. I believe that's Billy. Billy Parker. That's my grandma. My mother. Looks like my sister had an outing from the school, and I believe that's over at Greenfield Village, where they took this video years ago. Henry Ford Museum or Greenfield Village, one or the other. But I think it's the village. Ford family did a lot for Detroit. Beautiful homes and things that they had. Over the years, they've done a nice job of creating a nice historical factor for the state of Michigan. People from all over the world like to come and see the Henry Ford Museum in Greenfield Village. If I remember right, he had a lot of Thomas Edison stuff as well. That's Rex when he was a little pup. This is Dad up in the air. He was flying with one of his friends to take a look at the construction work that they had done and get a feel for the lay of the land for everything that was going on. It's amazing to see the rows of houses from what they built back in the day. After World War II, so many of them came home hungry to make America a better place, and they built homes for everybody as best they could. They started out, houses were only about 500 square foot home. It was not, they didn't have big houses that they were putting up back after the GIs got home. They were selling them for about $4,000 with everything, land and everything. You can just see the rows of homes that got built. That's unbelievable. That's the Warren area, and you had Hazel Park, Warren, all those areas were prime areas for building those. It looks like the racetrack, the horse track over on DeQuinder. There's your GI homes. Just rows of them. Dad was a part of framing a lot of those houses. Him and his crews. It's one thing about my father. He never asked the men to do more than what he could do himself, but nobody could keep up with him. He was just that kind of guy. But he wanted everybody to give their best. He taught a lot of people how to work hard and make money. Us kids as well. We sure appreciated him. Him and Mom together were phenomenal in what they did for us. I think some of these pictures may have been just before we built the house over on Willowwood. Might have been when they were looking at some of the different areas. Looks like this plane's about ready to land and come back in. I can see the airport, and looks like he's on base coming in on a final. Looks like a grass runway. These are tail draggers too. They're old planes. Even back in that day, they were old planes. This is Dick Koleski, Kenny, Dorothy's half-brother, cousin Billy Derusha. Look like my mother, my grandpa, grandma, Homer and Wani. Here's Ann. And that's Dick Koleski playing the xylophone. That's my uncle Peg. He's playing the guitar. That's the main band that we had most of the years when we had any group. That's Kenny. He killed himself. That's Jeannie dancing with one of her kids, I believe. That's Grandma and Grandpa Parker. There's Kenny again. Him and Billy Derusha. And she died in a fire at her house. That's Dad sitting by the band. That's Cheryl dancing with Sandy Rahan. Jeannie, one of her kids. Don't know if that's Debbie or which one of the kids it is. Dick taking a bow. That's my brother and I. We got the kids playing Ring Around the Rosie. That's me shaking them up. Now, that's Jack. That's Cheryl. That's me. Don't know if that's our old neighbors or who that is in the background with us. Could be the Rosini kids. That's Billy Zimmerman. Al Rosini, he worked for Dad as well. He worked for Lakeview Building Company. They lived across the street from us on Willowwood. I believe that's one of Harold and Dorothy's kids. That's Jack. That's Kathy. That's Pete and Ann Parker's child. She was the oldest of the kids for like she's just learning how to walk at that time. This is when we were over on DeQuinder, over by the Sportsman's Club. We would go up to the little hill they had there, and we'd toboggan down that hill, and it was dangerous as could be in today's world, but it was at the time it was a fun thing to do. We did an awful lot of tobogganing and sliding down that hill, and the weather was ripe for us. You can see we had a wild time. think this is one of the first Christmases we had back in the day. Now that is, I believe that's Kim, if I'm not mistaken. That's Dorothy's. It's one of Dorothy's kids. I'm not sure which one. It could be Bub. Like I say, it's hard to say. That's my mother. Looks like she was getting ready to go out for the night. Might have been New Year's or something. She's pretty dressed up. That's me beside her. This is us out in the snow again. I think that they were trying to put water down to get it so we could go ice skating. And maybe Butch, myself, and maybe Paul Luffelbein. I don't know who the other player is there. I think that Paul Luffelbein was one of our neighbors. We lived in the country, and he was one of the few. In fact, we were walking in those fields one day, and I felt something go up my leg. Next thing I know, I had something crawling around in my back, and Paul reached in under my T-shirt and pulled out a little mouse. That dog right there is our dog Pal. I believe that's Pal. I can't tell if it's Rex or Pal, but I think it is Pal. This is the Trombley family and the Derusha family out at Avon Park, downtown Rochester. They used to dam up the Clinton River, and we used to be able to go swimming down in that park. That's Fred Trombley's wife and her kids, and then we had our kids were there, and I know that Aunt June and her kids were all there. So we had a pretty good size outing going. And had a lot of fun in that park. I can't remember when they stopped it, but we sure enjoyed it for the time we had. The park is still a major park in Rochester, but it's just, I don't think they dam it up anymore or do anything of any nature like what they did back in that day. See Cheryl there. I think that's Bob Trombley walking with her, with my mom. Mom with Jack. Like I say, the Trombleys had 10 children, so we'd have quite a tribe when we all got together. There's Cheryl and my mom. This, I think, is at Metropolitan Beach, Lake St. Clair. I remember they had to close that down for a while. It got so polluted. They finally cleaned it up. This is an outing somewhere where the family got together. I believe this is part of a trip that Dad and Mom went to California. And this might be one of the Knoxbury Farms or something there, but I know Mom and Dad had gone to California. The film doesn't come out real well, but if you look carefully, you can get a feel for some of the mountainous areas off the ocean and other things as we go further on this. That appears to be a resort that they're at there. They got a boat ride, different things. This is where it appears they're traveling. I think they're heading to the Redwood Mountains, or Redwood Forest rather. And I know at the end of this you'll start to see how big those trees were compared to my father standing on them, next to them. Definitely in some footlands or some mountainous area, you can see it around. Here's my pop. Here's the Redwood Forest. You don't get the feel of the dynamics of it till you see my father next to that tree. It's unbelievable. You can see the road where the rock had fallen over, but it's still passable. This is the start of the second phase of the films that I finally produced. We were up in the UP. This is at Uncle Riley's house with Aunt Lisa and Uncle Riley. You got Donnie and Ray, Ev, his wife, first wife. You got Jan and Jean, Grandma. You got, looks like Patsy in the background there as well. I believe. There's Grandma. Grandma Eve. Uncle Riley, he had that house as long as I can remember. I was growing up. My mom, that's the old Lincoln, a 56 Lincoln. That's Jack, and I think that's Arlene. If I'm not mistaken, that's Arlene Derusha. That's me and Al and Jack. I believe that's Jan spinning us around. Cheryl on the swing. That's Grandma. That was one of the houses they lived in over there down in Rex, I remember. They moved in from the farm to a place for a little while, and then they built the house they had over on the main road. Remember, that house was for sale for like $4,000 at one time, that old house next to the railroad. This is downtown Rexton. That's Uncle Riley's house. I take it back. That may be Grandpa's house there. That was, I'm pretty sure that is. That looks like Grandpa's house. I think it must have been Easter time or something. We were all dressed up. That's me and Mom and Al, or Butch. That's Grandma. That's us back down at Uncle Riley's again. Cheryl, Arlene, Jan. No, that looks like Jean. That might be Jean Derusha. There's Cheryl. Al, David, Jackie. Yep, it was Easter. It looks like he's pretty happy. He got himself... He had a little pose there for a moment. If you notice, I'm the only one that's got all the paper off of mine. That's my mom. And there's the church. It's a Mennonite church. Used to be downtown, right down on the main street of the big town of Rexton, Michigan. If you blinked your eyes, you'd pass it. Pass it right by. All back in the day. This is long before we built the cabin or had a trailer on the property. We ended up buying the piece of property right next to Grandpa's house. That became Don and Patsy's house. When Grandma and Grandpa passed on. I think that's Ray Derusha doing a little practicing. Yep. A lot of the family worked for the county road commission, clearing roads and doing things on a part-time basis. I don't know if it was always permanent or part-time. This was kind of like the road coming into Rexton, if I remember right. I had aunts and uncles and family that lived there for as long as I can remember. And we had Aunt Betsy's house, and we had Aunt Dow's. Those were my dad's their aunts, our great aunts. Actually, some of them, I think, were my dad's great aunts and uncles. That's the school in Rexton. I believe that's the school my dad might have gone to when he was a young kid. Then you got Hendricks Township Hall. No, Hudson's. Hendricks is out by the farm. Hudson's was the township in where Rex was. This is film of, I believe, my father over at Sarnia at the Drawbridge Inn. He used to enjoy going to the Drawbridge Inn on the weekends and relax and enjoy himself a little bit. I was over by Sarnia, Ontario. He'd take us every once in a while. He'd take us to go there and swim and enjoy. As we got older, Mom and Dad would just go with other friends. But they always enjoyed going over to Canada. You know, for people that lived in Detroit, Canada was always a fun place. In downtown Detroit, they had the Rooster Tail and the Playboy Club. Back in the day, that was over in the Canadian area. They'd get entertainers come and they'd get to watch them sing and do their thing. I believe that's our house on Willowwood. That's back to the Drawbridge Inn again. Sure get a good feel for the kind of vehicles we had back in that day. Mom and Dad coming to meet with some friends. For the years I've lived in Detroit, I always enjoyed going to Canada as well. Something about it just had at that time it still had the air of the Queen. When you go to the restaurants, they'd have the napkins with the crown, you know, all the different things that you'd think about when you go over there. It makes it a little different than America. And did some business there as well. It was that is Susie Derusha, Cheryl and Johnny's child. That's Jeff and Tracy. Can't tell the other ones from the look here. That's Dorothy with Susie on the swings there, and you know what? That's Johnny. That's Johnny as a baby. Johnny was Cheryl and John's last child. This is in the backyard of the Willowwood house. Johnny's name was Scott Matthew, and when Mom and Dad adopted the kids, they changed him to Johnny Parker, or Johnny Derusha. That's Grandpa Ray, and that's Uncle Riley in the background, talking to some of the old family, old Derusha family. That's Donnie Derusha. I believe this is the last family reunion we had with Cheryl and John. This was, in fact, probably an hour or so before Cheryl and John's accident. That's Patsy Derusha. That's Donnie's wife. I believe Cheryl's sitting in the back corner. There's Dad. Dad had had a snowmobile accident, and he was limping around for a couple of years with a bad leg. Looks like that's Dick Koleski in the back, and that's Grandpa feeding Susie, Cheryl's middle daughter. And that's Chris, some of the Koleski kids, Dick and Jean's kids. That's Johnny, Heather, and me. Dad with Johnny. That's Aunt Jane. That's Heather, me. There's Idlewild Inn. I think Mabel worked there, if I remember right. I think you'll see her. That's my grandfather. That's Patsy. I think she used to work there for a while. I think she brings Mabel out here. That's Dad. During hunting season, they spent a lot of time at that bar. It was a place they'd go get something to eat and have some drinks. I believe that's Mabel. She was the owner of the bar. Most of the family go up there. They all knew her. She knew the family well. There's Mom and Grandpa Ray. Grandpa's old 56 Ford. I think that is a 56 Ford. That's Dad's partner, Joe, and Dad and June. They're coming out of the cabin. That's Fred and Betty Trombley. There's Grandpa Ray. There's the farm. That's my grandfather. That's where my father was born. And that's where my dad's family pretty much raised there. And behind that farm was another one. Was my great-grandfather's farm. That's Hendricks Township Hall. And there's the old farm from my grandfather's. You can see in the background for a moment there. The Bodwins took that over. My grandfather's sister's family. And Aunt Esther's house was just passed by. And Uncle Camille. They were my dad's aunt and uncle. That's you're seeing the days of the old cabin that we had up in the UP next to my grandfather's house. I remember growing up and going down. They used to have an old hotel that used to be there. Was all abandoned, but it was back in the day they had logging. We had built in the back of the cabin we had built a bunkhouse, so that when the boys wanted to come and go hunting, they had beds for everybody. That's what you're seeing there is the bunkhouse. All up in Rexton, Michigan. That's Jimmy Eberts. He was a trimmer for Dad and Joe. He worked with them for years. Looks like Donnie. They've had a hard day out hunting, you can tell. That's my Uncle Bob Parker. Not sure if that's Wilma or who that is. That's Grandma and Grandpa, Dad. There's Larry Parker. That's his wife. I think it's Brenda, if I'm right. I can't remember names well. It's hard to remember all the names. That's Harry Paucan and Grandpa and Uncle Bob playing cards. And Dad. That was me. Grandma Parker. I think that might be Tracy. I can't tell for sure. This was Jack. No, this is... Boy, I can't remember. That looks like Bobby. That might be Billy. That may be Jack. That may be... I think that's Bobby, Billy, and Jack. At the house in Willowwood. Pretending to be rock stars. That's Bobby and Billy Parker. That's Bob Parker, my Uncle Bob Parker and Grandpa. So I suspect that's Bobby and Billy and Jack. Yes, it is. Later on, he created his own band for a little while. He had a little band going. I have to believe that's probably Tracy. That's Grandma Parker rocking her in a chair. That looks like Larry. That's Al, or Butch. That's Dave, and that was a girl I dated. I remember her. Fairchild. Marilyn Fairchild. This is Dad out on a snowmobile. Got all the little kids coming after him. Looks like they're up north to get ready to do some serious ski doing. Might be Gordon Holtz there. That almost looked like Gordon for a minute. We sure used to get the snow up in the UP. There's no question about that. You'd bury your house if you didn't dig it out. I think that was the Olds 98 that we had. That's the car I think I just saw was an old Olds 98. I know we used to walk up to Quinlan's. Up in the UP, we'd walk up to Quinlan's, and there's Patsy picking up one of her kids. They had moved into Grandpa's house by then. But we had Quinlan's and we had can't remember, Ray Hardy. He had the Marathon station. And the H&S Sinclair station was the Quinlan's. 2 stores for a while, and then Quinlan's went away, and I think one Quinlan boy, I think he drowned, if I remember right. Looks like we're getting kind of rough here. That's Arlene. I believe that's me and Arlene and another girl. Yep, that is Arlene. That's me. That might have been the girl next door to the cabin there. I can't remember. Don't remember their last name. That's Grandpa on the snowmobile, Grandpa Ray. Donnie taking him off. He was getting up in years by then. That's Pop. Him and Gordon. That's the Dodge Lancer. That was Al's first car, and that became my first car, that little white Lancer there. Trying to push it out. Can't believe we have a picture of the old Lancer. Al must be taking it someplace. It looks like it's him driving there. Kids sitting around the sled there that they can't tell who they are. It's Grandpa Ray. Could be Don and Patsy's kids. I just can't tell. There's Cheryl with Tracy. That's Jack with Tracy. Tracy was our first niece. For us boys. That's Grandma Parker, Dorothy, Arlene. That's Grandma. Oh, Aunt Letha and Jan. So that's who was sitting there. There's Tracy in the living room of the house on Willowwood. Not sure if that's Susie or who that is, laying on the bed. Looks like Jack. And that right there is Aunt Jane, Uncle Peg's wife, and Grandpa, Parker, Uncle Riley, throwing some horseshoes. Looks like Steve Rayon, Harold, throwing horseshoes. On the other end, it looks like Dick Koleski and Dad on the other side throwing horseshoes. That's Pop throwing the horseshoes. There's Aunt Sis. And Millie and Gene Koleski. Sandy. No, I don't know if that's... There's Cheryl and John, the Mustang. I believe that's me coming in on a... That was me coming in on a snowmobile. And that is our dog Pal. We got him from the Sportsman's Club back in the day. I love the cars. I love seeing the old cars. We get a chance to see all the things we used to drive around in. That's Larry Parker. This, I believe, is Larry Parker's wedding. I think they had a party in our basement after the wedding. That's Larry and his wife. That's Pete Parker sitting next to him. It looked like Don Parker next to Pete. Haven't seen Larry in years. I haven't seen him in a long time. I know it's got to be hard on that family. They just lost their brother with Bobby passing away. These films have a way of reminding you of all the family that we've had. There's Cheryl. Looks like Bobby. Yep, that's Bobby Anglem. Look like Jeannie and Louise. Uncle Fritz Rayan. Uncle Peg. What a crew. That's Gordon, it looks like. Grandpa. That's Jack Anglem. That's Kimberly over there. I see her. Looks like maybe Jeff. That's Bob Anglim's Super Sport. He had a hell of a car, and that's Johnny with his Mustang. Had a 4.56 rear end in it. And he loved to get out there and could burn the tires off of him in a night if he wanted to. That car had such a low gear to it. It was a 66, if I remember right. Chevelle. This is more snow. Around the Willowwood area. That's Tracy, Susie. There's Johnny. This is whether we're still living on Willowwood. He grew up to be a good worker. Johnny worked with me for a while. He was a heck of a draftsman. He could make AutoCAD, he could run with it and unbelievably put out a drawing in hours. In just a couple hours' time, he could have a major drawing done for me. Johnny was only about 9 months old when Cheryl and John passed on. So, I mean, the three of them were all within a range of about 3-4 years, from 4 years old down to about 9 months old. So, folks did a good job to bring those kids forward. Really hard on the family when we lost little Johnny. 18 years later, it's crazy. Have it happen at a family reunion was really crazy. Up in the UP with a Mustang just like his daddy. Both of them had broke their neck, rolled their cars and broke their neck. Hard to see who's in this pool. I know my father's in there, but I can't see. I don't know if my sister's in there with one of the kids or who's in there at that. I just can't tell. We used to enjoy swimming. I mean, it was always a fun thing to do. looks like Cheryl, but I can't tell. I just can't tell. Some of this film is difficult to see what's there. I believe that's Jack with one of Cheryl's kids. I can't tell for sure, but I think it is. No, that almost looks... That looks like Johnny, but that can't be. I don't know time-wise. These things flip around and I can't tell who's who from what time in their life. Pretty sure Jack is in this picture, but I just can't get enough, can't make out enough to know. I like this picture. It came out clear. This is me and my son Davey, my oldest son. Davey's now 49 years old. This was, I put him on one of my on my motorcycle. I had a Yamaha back in that day. Dad asked me to get something off the truck, so I left my son sitting there on a motorcycle. Glad he didn't fall. I think that's Al backing his out to take a ride on his. Or Butch. Looks like Davey's ready to go. Here's my pop. Ready to take him down the road. Dad's forklift there, and he's got Davey up there trying to figure out how to run it. I remember we were building a house one time. Oh, not a house, we were building an apartment project. It was about 3 blocks long over at 7 Mile and Outer Drive. That's Cheryl and John's car. That was the dune buggy that they were driving when they had their accident. And this is fairly about the same time frame, not far from the time we had driven up north together. And side by side, I had the kids in my station wagon, and they were driving. They were just having a heck of a good time driving all the way up to the UP for that family reunion in that buggy. And the kids were sleeping in the back of my station wagon at that time. There's Pop out there cutting the lawn. He's going to have one of the kids in his hands. He always seemed to have one of the kids with him when he was out doing something. Can't tell who that one is. We'll see when we get a little closer. There's Tracy. There's Susie and Johnny. The backyard of Willowwood. Out on the patio. I think that's Jack. Yep. The old Tempest, that's Harry Paucan's old car. I believe that's Al and Jack, and I don't know if I'm in that picture or not. I can't tell you. I don't believe that was my bike. I don't think it was. There's Susie. That's Davy. Somebody dancing in the background. Probably Tracy. There's more snowmobiling. A lot of snowmobiling in this video. That just shows how much they enjoyed the snow and the outdoors. Susie and Tracy and David, little Dave. Can't much see what's there. Looks like Tracy. There's Al. Yeah, that might be me out on the snowmobile because that was my station wagon. Lakeview building truck. Yep, Dad with that bad leg after that snowmobile accident he had. He hobbled around for a couple of years in a hard way with that. Finally got it working, but it took about 2 years to get that healed up, where he wasn't limping along. There's Pal. Him and Dad. Like I say, we got him from the Sportsman's Club. He was their watchdog for a while, and he was a good dog. We had a lot of fun with him. He nipped me in the back one time, I remember. Me and Butch were playing around on the patio, and he thought we were doing something to get in trouble, so he nipped me in the back. That's me and Davy. Can't tell where this is. I don't know if they're up in the... I have to believe they might be up in the UP on this. Haven't had any. Yeah. We could have got a good snow. Just too much haze to see where we are. I'm beginning to think it's can't tell if that's Susie or this is interesting. I didn't know this was here. This is Cheryl, John, Bobby Anglem, Alan, and Al, Tracy, Susie, and Johnny, all at my house that I had over in Pontiac. That's Al. There's Cheryl, Heather, and that's Alan. And this is all my first house that I bought. That's Bob Anglem. And that was me. This was over by where the Silverdome was built. It was just across the subdivision, just across the street off of Featherstone, where the Silverdome was built. I bought this house for $17,000. I assumed they're a VA mortgage. And I had that house for about a year and a half, 2 years. And then built a house in Romeo. But this was, had a basement, all brick house, about 1,000 square foot house, 3-bedroom. That's Cheryl. I had no film or anything of that house. There's the backyard of that house, but I had no film. That neighborhood was about 70, when I bought in, it was about 70% black people lived in it. And when I sold, it was about 90% black. And like I say, it was a good home for us, and the neighbors were really good to me there. I had a real good neighborhood. We had some bad people lived on the same street, though, that got in trouble. But the ones right by my house were good people. There's Davy. Everybody wants to get in on the action. It looked like my dad. Maybe he'd sitting in that chair. That would mean my mother was the one taking the film, which makes sense, because otherwise we wouldn't have this film. So Mom and Dad had to be there with us when everybody came over to the house. That's Johnny, and there's there's Butch's car, Cheryl's. And there's Donnie. There's Al, Cheryl, and John. I think this was the family reunion. That's Jeff. This was hours before Cheryl and John passed away from that accident. There's Bev. That was her boyfriend. That was Heather. Uncle Riley. Yep. And there's Chris. Looked like one of Bobby's kids there. That's Jeff. That's Big Bob. Derusha. Dad with Davy. That's Sandy. Uncle Peg. Uncle Fritz. Al. Don't know some of them there. Heck of a lot of family, that's all I can say. That looks like Jan. Saw Pete earlier, so it might have been. And Dick. Look like Aunt Jane. Here's Grandpa Ray Derusha. It's, I believe, Dad. Yep, that is Dad. There's Davy and Susie and Tracy riding in the back of in the trailer with Dad riding on the driving the tractor. With 4 hours of footage, there's a lot of the same kind of thing. They love to drive on tractors and snowmobiles and ride around. You just the kids are just having a good time. Looks like you made a pit stop. There they go again. I'm not sure if that was me or Jack that just came in on a motorcycle. That's me sitting in the trailer with him. I brought Johnny out, and little Johnny was I'm holding him in my arms, so they all get a ride. This is Sue and Johnny. That's Dad pushing him in the chair in the pool. This is when Dad decided he was going to close in the porch. He already had a roof over the top of it. He decided he's going to close it in and add some more space to the house. He has me working with him to help him put it together. This is little Johnny and Susie out there in the patio while Dad and I were doing some work. think that's Davy. That'd be Tracy. Susie. Kind of tough to ride a bike that way. It looks like Al. Looks like they're setting out to go on a journey. That's that's his Mustang, and there's Heather and Dave. Heather and myself and Davy. That's our old station wagon. Might have been Pal jumping. That looked like maybe one of the Stramalia kids. But I think he'd be too old. Might have been Jack. You know who that was? I believe that was Jack. That's Jack and Tracy. That's who that is. That looks like Jeff and Bob. And I think that's, yep, and that's Kimberly. It's Harold and Dorothy's kids. It might have been that's Harold and Dorothy taking off in the Corvair, in a little Corvair. Looks like Dad and somebody riding on a machine, don't know for sure who. Almost looks like Wally Guara. Mom and Dad out there on a snowmobile. I think that was the old Scorpion, if I remember right. That long time back. I have a feeling that this is the end of the burning of the barn, of the not the barn, I mean of the old farm up in the UP. I saw a fire earlier, or later on in it's not in proper sequence, and I saw the building burning. So I think this is the end of Grandpa's old farmhouse burning down. Can't tell for sure, but I do remember seeing it looked like the old farmhouse burning, and I just don't know for sure if this is part of it or not. I remember going to that old farmhouse. We have to go out to the outhouse out in the you had to walk out there at night. You had a slop bucket, and they had beds upstairs and that, and they had a bunch of old quilts. Try and keep you warm. And I know it had a wood burning stove in there. Grandma would cook us breakfast when we stayed up there. And quite an old place. That old farmhouse, in the end, had so many bats in it. It was pathetic. I remember staying there. The last time we stayed there, the bats, you could just hear them all over in the house. Hard to keep up with all these snowmobiles, who's who. But they sure like to go out and run the trails. Run up to the bar, have some drinks, and then come back home. There's whatever's burning, there it is burning. Like I say, I thought that might be the old farmhouse. like Jack and Dad. Maybe Johnny. Snowmobiling has become a major thing in the family back in that day, and you'll see a lot of videos that show how the family got together and how they enjoyed each other's time and adventures. Like I said, they used to go to Mabel's bar and have some food and drinks and drive back at the night as well as in the day. It was a fun time for them, and it was a fun time for the kids. They all got a chance to really enjoy the outside. This is taking place on Willowwood. There's Tracy. Looks like she's ready to go snowmobiling. Just one after another having fun out there. Looks like Susie ready to go snowmobiling. I think that's can't tell if that was my mother or who that was. From riding tractors to snowmobiles to they're always out doing something. Again, you can surely see the snow on the ground back in those days. Looks like Jeff and Susie and Tracy. There's Tracy. Can't tell for sure who the one is in red. Either Susie or Johnny, more than likely. If you remember in the beginning we had a tractor like that was Bobby Parker was riding on. Looks like they're playing on the patio in the backyard of the Willowwood house. I have to believe that little one may be Johnny and Susie. I think that's Susie. And that'd be Tracy. Looks like they're all ready to go. More on tractors. Dad loved to take him and drive him around on the tractors. He had the little cart to be able to haul them all at one time. This appears to be my dad at the swimming pool again. I think that's maybe Jack. Some of these pictures are so hard to figure out who's who. Maybe when I put them on the big screen, to be able to read them a little better. Looks like Dad sitting up on the deck there watching him. Another family get together. It looks like a picnic outing. I see there's Donnie Parker. This appears to be the Parker family gathering. I don't know. Looks like Derushis are there as well. So Parkers and Derushis get together quite a bit. So this looks like my mom. Is that Arlene? No, can't tell. This dates back, so it's hard to tell what time period. There's Pop. Aunt Sis. Uncle Swede. This had to be a family get-together. Uncle Wilbur. Uncle Riley. Aunt Sis and Grandpa Ray. Looks like Louise, maybe. Louise Anglem. Grandma died in about 1962. Grandpa lived on to be quite a bit older. I think Grandpa was in his 80s when he passed on, and Grandma died, and I believe she was about 69 when she passed on. It's Uncle Swede, and this is a hard one for me to figure out. It looks like Ann Parker. Or else Jean. No, that's Jean. That's Jean Koleski. That's 4 generations there. That's Jean Koleski. That's not Ann Parker. That was Jean Koleski, and that's probably her first one. That's got to be Debbie, I would think. The baby is Debbie. That's my grandmother. My grandfather. Aunt Sis and Jean Koleski. And there's Jack and Louise. Looks like Uncle Swede. There's Harold, my mother. That's Dick Koleski and Uncle Peg playing the guitar, and Dick always played the accordion or the xylophones. My mother and Uncle Swede, Jeannie and Grandpa Ray. Jack and Aunt Sis, Jack Anglem and Aunt Sis. Dancing together. I think this party is in the garage at our house on Willowwood, what it looks like. That looked like Bobby Anglem. Uncle Swede and Grandma Eva. Here's a picture of Susie and Tracy. Yep, appears to be in the living room of the house in Willowwood. These kids, they grow up. Tracy's got 3 kids. Susie has 4. Families have grown so big. It's hard to get the family together anymore for that reason. I believe that's Heather and Davy in the swimming pool. Maybe not. So hard. Yeah, I think that is. Hard to believe we're able to get some of these pictures, to be honest with you. Film's been sitting around for so long. I guess with these videos we can at least get a feel of what we're made out of, with all the different family members that are a part of our life. I know us as first cousins, we all pretty much shared in the family reunions, and they were able to get us all together. Like I say, that's changed a lot over the years. Families have gotten so big. Still miss seeing all of them. Think about them a lot. We were one big family. It's surprising how everyone goes different directions. I've been down in Georgia now for 17 years. Jack's been out in California for, probably close to 30 years, 20 some years at least. We still try to get together once a year. Us boys, Jack and Butch. They look like Cheryl. That may be Tracy. I say this film jumps all over. I need to clean it up, try and organize it a little better. I've been picking up some software to help me pull this together. It needs a little bit more work. Yeah, I believe that to be Tracy when she was just first starting to crawl. Seemed to like the camera. It's Dad, Cheryl, and John. That's a little better picture. Tracy got a lot of attention being the first of any of our nieces or nephews, and it was quite exciting for us boys, Al, Jack, and myself, to be uncles. I know Cheryl really loved her kids. I think Cheryl and John are both very proud to have those 3 kids. I remember their house out in Waterford. I lived with them for a short period of time, but I remember when they bought the house and we had a painting party, and everybody was sitting around drinking, and I was out painting and doing closets and different things, and came out and everybody was pretty much just having a good old time. That's Cheryl feeding Tracy. I can't tell if this is the house on Willowwood or if this was at her house. Yeah, this is definitely the house on Willowwood. Cheryl and Tracy sitting there in the dinette. Johnny. Harry Paul can. They did love to come back home. They spent a lot of time back at Willowwood over the years. There's Dad. It was when he was first getting used to being a grandpa. Harry Paul can. Not sure where this is. I'm not sure if this is going back to the Drawbridge Inn or where it is for sure. This must be the drawbridge inn, because I'm beginning to think that fella was with Martone. Yep, that's Alan. So that was the fellow that was dating Alan's mother, if I remember right. Germaine or something like that was the last name. Can't remember the first name. Fred Martone was the original father. He became, I believe, the stepfather. So that might be some of the... Yeah, that's who that is. Johnny Martone. The young fellow there. Pieces start to come together. The more you watch it, they seem to pull out of your mind the faces and the people. But it's hard to grab them all. We carry so many. Whoa. I think that was me. It just fell. That's Jack. That was Ellen. Looks like Al. That's Tracy. That's Rebecca. It's my second wife. That looks to be Nate. That's Susie. This is all at the house on Old Creek. Not sure. It's a pretty clear video there. Susie, Johnny, see my house, and this is at Dad's house over on Old Creek. Mom and Dad's. The old Winnebago. They took a lot of trips with that. It was nice over on Old Creek. We had Jack living over there. We lived next door to Mom and Dad. Jack lived just out in front of her. So all three of us were at the same place for a while. That was That's me. I'm not sure if this is Susie. Trying to get a feel of these little ones are possibly Nicole and that's Nick, and that's Nathan. Nick's that little, and Nicole and them weren't here yet. Susie's carrying Nathan, and Nick was in the walker. That's Jack. I think he's got Johnny in the pool with him. Yep, that's Johnny. There's Tracy. I think Susie down. Yep, there's Susie. Can't believe how crystal clear some of these pictures turn out and so how terrible some are. It's a pretty clean pool from what I can see. Nice blue water. I believe that's Edith with Susie and Tracy. That's these pictures, the kids had grown up a little bit. This is Susie, Tracy, Johnny. Looks like they're at a McDonald's, I think. I don't recall seeing one that busy, but it is. I can see the signs for the McDonald's, so they definitely were catering to the kids back in those days. They seem to be having lots of fun. Here's some more snowmobiling. There's sure a lot of snowmobiling in this. I think this is trying to get a feel for where they are. You got the Winnebago. Yeah, they're up in Rex. They're up in Rexton again. They're going to be doing some jumping with these machines. There's Dad. That Winnebago took them a lot of places. They were down in Florida. They were up in the UP with it. They were all over that. They enjoyed the old Winnebago. It was a good way to be able to take care of the kids and not be locked into the house. I remember going to Florida with Mom and Dad and Davy back in the day. It was a good trip. Susie and Johnny and Tracy. There's Bobby Parker, Billy Parker, Grandpa, Larry. It looks like Mary Cribbs. I see Kim. That's Jamie. That's the first picture I've seen of Jamie. It looks like Bub, Dorothy's son. Sue. And that looks like Dorothy's other son there. Saw Joyce a minute ago, Bill and Joyce. There they are, that's Bill and Joyce. Parker. Bobby Parker, Kim. They say Bobby had just passed on recently. Apparently they were at some staged shooting over in western town of some kind. Get to watch them do their little act. There's Pop with all the girls. That's Grandma, Wayne rather, and Mary Cribbs. They say Bobby, Billy, Grandma. Pretty much the Parker family there. Yep, this is up in Rexton again, on snowmobiles. And it looks like the kids are on that ride. Now it looks like he's back home. In his own backyard. That's Pop driving the snowmobile. These films flip so fast. Whenever the toys came out, all the kids were out there ready to go. Spent a lot of time outside. Always someone running to jump on a tractor or a trailer or a snowmobile and somebody falling flat on their face. And piling on. Whether it's a toboggan. For all the video I've seen here, it's always kind of the same thing. Everybody running. Trying to get a ride out of it. This all appears to be back out of the house on Willowwood again. This is while they were out on the road. They apparently ran across I don't know if it was SeaWorld or where they were here, but they got a clown out on the water, out on the lake. They do some pretty unique things, and then you got these ladies with flags coming in, standing on each other's shoulders on skis. Pretty talented people. All the different countries. Fellow coming down from the sky landing into the water with skis on. Looks like Florida to me. That might have been the trip that we had in Florida. That looked like Davy was there too. With Susie, Johnny, and Trace. No, that's not Davy. I don't think. Well, maybe it is. Yep. That's that trip we did to Florida. Boy, I remember driving that Winnebago in Miami. It was really tight. That's Dad with the kids. It was a fun trip. That was a fun trip. More snowmobiling. Out in front of the cabin up in Rexton, Michigan. There was certainly a lot of weekends of snowmobiling that went on up there. Dad would take his machines up there and really cut loose. There's Mom. We've had those deer follow us for years. We have them in every home we've had. We've had the deer running in the backyards. I didn't see them so much on Willowwood, but I sure have seen them on Old Creek, and I've seen them on the houses that I've had here. I've had them in my driveway in the backyard here in Gainesville, Georgia. I always loved those things. When I lived up in Lansing, Okemos area, I used to see them all the time. We have a sanctuary here in Gainesville that's right around the corner from us. It's a 5-mile walking trails, and we've got a lot of deer that come from that area. Dad out on the tractor with one of the kids. It must be Susie he's with. No, there's Susie there. Susie, Johnny, and Tracy on the swings. That's Tracy. That's Susie on the tractor. That's Susie driving the tractor alone. That's scary. That's Norma Simmons. They had at the house, they had a party, it looks like, for a luau. Everybody dressed up in costume, ready for do their dances. I know Mom and Dad had gone, I believe, to Hawaii with Norma and her husband. So when they came home, they decided they'd have their own luau at the house. That's Susie and Edith and that's Norma's husband. Norma Simmons, she was the one that very strong for our family. That was Jack a minute ago. Tracy out there doing her thing. Try to get that grass skirt to move. Looks like Dad walking around on the old bridge we had on Old Creek before we put the big one in. We had put a wooden bridge to get across so we could start building. And we had to put a bigger one in. This is where he built his house. He looks like he's got it staked out. That's where he where we built his house for him on Old Creek. We ended up putting 8 houses on that street. We bought Old Creek, and then I bought the property next door, and we had Winter Creek. So we ended up with 16 houses out there. We tried to keep I had a fella come in and cut all the trees down and clear for the lots. His name was Jack Johnson. He was an Indian fella. Him and his kids came and undercut the growth and cleaned it up for us and took out areas for the septics and for the roads and for the houses. But this is the machines coming in to get started to build those houses. It's probably David Rodney Proper, I think it was their last name. They were our excavators back in those days. Ended up building him a house around the corner from us. Proper brothers, their daddy had been in that business, and they came into the business. I used them for a lot of homes that I built. When we had basements to put in, they were the ones to come dig the basements for us. Kids enjoying the ride on the machinery. This started digging the basement for the house on Old Creek for Dad. Dad on a tractor with Johnny. Johnny sleeping, it looked like. Kids out with a snowman. I think that's me putting a hat on the snowman for him. That's Susie. Yeah, that's Susie, Tracy, Johnny, and Davy. That's Davy, and that's Susie. That's me. Trying to put a little mouth on the snowman. That's a good picture. That looks like Jim Good. He came back to put the hat on, and next thing you know, that everything fell. Jim Good just passed away a few months ago. That was Heather's brother. That old Winnebago. The kids can't believe their snowman lasted just a matter of a few seconds and it was over. On to another venture. always running to get on a slide, toboggan, whatever. This appears to be the house on Old Creek. That was Sheba. That looks to be, I think that's Nathan. I think that's Nathan. That looked like Jack's kids there for a minute. That's Mom. Yeah, I'm going to say that's Nathan. That's my son. He's got 3 kids now. That looked like Nicholas. And maybe one of the other kids. I'm not sure if... I think was Patches. That was Cheryl's cat at one time, if I remember right. Mom and Dad ended up inheriting him. That looks like Nate and Nicholas. It's hard to tell. Susie out spinning them. That's Nate. That's Nicholas there as a baby. That might have been, I don't think Cole would have been there. Nicole, I don't think. That's Al Guara and Evelyn Guara. Grandpa Parker. Jeff. Al. Butch. Looks like Harold and Dad sleeping. Grandma Parker. This appears to be an elephant floating across the water. This is pieces of film that we saw earlier, but it comes back in again. With all the American flags and all on skis. This is that fella going up in the air with his skis on and coming back down. This had to be Sea World or something. Looks like a big walrus. I think there's seals and walruses there, I'm not sure. Then they've got a drive through the zoo. I always like those. You got all those animals out there, you're in your car. I don't know how they do that, but got a lion out there. The old safari type scenery of trying to be closer to the animals. I think in the real world those lions would be eating those things. You don't seem to mind the vehicles, but I guess they get used to being fed, but I would be afraid to have those horns scratching my car. They got quite a rack on them. Yep, they're coming up to get something to eat. I think what you're starting to see here is, I think Pop is in Hawaii, if I'm not mistaken. I think this is when they went to Hawaii. His mom and dad had gone there. Like I say, I think they went with Arnold Simmons and Norma Simmons. I know Mom has gone back to Hawaii a few times since Dad's been gone. She had had gotten herself a timeshare. Her and Dorothy had gone there. Dorothy and Mom traveled quite a bit before Mom started getting a little more frail. Definitely looks like Hawaii to me. Never been there. Don't have a lot of interest to go there. I mean, they tell me it's really beautiful. This is Edith graduating, it appears. Or it's Jack graduating and Edith wearing his gown, I'm not sure. It looks like Davy looking up to him. Jack looked good in his gown. That's Tracy. I just went through the last graduation of my children. My 18-year-old son graduated this year. Hard to believe I've got a son 49 years old and I've got another one that's 18. 31 years difference with 8 kids, 12 grandkids. We've got a pretty big family. There's Pop and Jack, like the sign. Caution adults. Susie. Looks like Jamie in the background. Yep. There's Jamie in the background. Johnny. My oh my. Jack's done very well. He's done very well. He got into the carpenter business for a while after that, and then from there he went into doing a little bit of building. He's done a lot of everything. That's Jamie there. Johnny. Not sure where they're at to get that buggy, but that's a... They appear to be at some camp. Davy's there with them, so this must have been when we were on the road. This is all part of that trip we took to Florida. Those pieces are all throughout this. They say you got to try and put it all together, get it where it belongs, but it looks to me like we're still in Florida, staying at one of the camps with the Winnebago. I think that was me and Heather laying out there in the sun. Johnny and Tracy, Susie, Dad. She got a lot of love for her dad and grandpa. There's Mom, Susie, Tracy. Here's my mother at the pool. Looks like she's doing a test on it. Looks like George Pulsifer's wife. Like I say, the more you watch these movies, the more you start to get a feel for. Here's the two girls riding the bike together. But you get a feel for the names, and they all start to come back after a while. But when you haven't seen them for so long, it really is hard to remember everybody. I can't believe how many years it's been since I've seen some of my relatives. It's heartbreaking. I think Shirley was from Texas, if I remember right. I know she had a sister as well. I believe they were from Texas. That could be Shirley's sister. I can't remember, but Shirley married George. And I think they moved to Texas. I think they all moved to Texas. I didn't remember George having kids. This is when I was D.A. Derusha Residential Builders, and I had put shirts for the kids, and I noticed on this film they've got a lot of those old shirts. My son sent me a picture with his daughter, who's now 16 years old. She was wearing one of those shirts just not a couple months ago. Dad's house on Old Creek. He always liked the French mansards. There's my house. That's Davy playing on the swing on a tire. There's that shirt I was telling you about with Jamie there. Johnny. Again, that's a picture of my house. Sasha, our dog. That's got to be Susie and Tracy. That's got to be Susie and Tracy. Or Susie and Tracy, I mean Natalie and Nicole. It's got to be. They're a year apart. And my other boys are a year apart. Yeah, Nicole was asking me just the other day about that, whether I had any baby pictures of her. There's a good chance that was baby pictures of them. This is, again, digging the basement for the house on Old Creek for Dad's. I believe it was Dad's. I see the pins up there. Just getting ready to put the deck on. That's Pop. There's those shirts I was telling you about. The kids are all wearing them. Johnny with a hammer in his hand pounding nails. That was the basic start of Dad's house there. That's when it got framed in before shingles went on. was a nice house for the folks. Sure enjoyed living next to him. It was a blessing to have our family that close. This is when the house was built, and looks like we're having a family get-together. Grandma and Grandpa. There's Grandpa Parker. Donnie Parker. That's me. Al. Larry's wife. Larry. It's my Aunt Guy, my dad. Looks like Donnie Parker Jr. Rebecca. There's Pete's wife back there. That's Pete. That's Grandpa. Tracy. Johnny. Susie. Tracy. We're really blessed to have the family we've had. This, by the way, is a little treat for everybody. It's an old film that we had. I hope you all enjoyed watching this. It was a treasure that we thought needed to be put back out to the family. Bring back some of the memories of all those that have been a part of our life. I hope it brings the joy to you that it brings to me, and the memories of those that we loved for all those years.